George, you remember our episode where we watched Midnight Cowboy?
Sure I do, Joe.
And you know how the guys live in a rundown building?
Yep.
Why didn't Space Machines help them out like we see in Batteries Not Included?
Well, they are two very different movies, and I'm pretty sure if Midnight Cowboy had cute robots, it would have ruined the movie.
Because Joe Buck would have tried to fuck them?
Sure?
I think robots from outer space would have improved Midnight Cowboy. Everybody's talking at me. I don't hear a word they're saying. Only the fucking of this machine. People stop and staring. I can't see their faces because I'm 69 in a machine. I'm going where the sun keeps shining through the pouring rain. Going where the weather fucks machine.
God, Joe, stop for fuck's sake. I know I just did a cabaret night, but geez, this is how you get back at me for making me go to that? All right, that was stupid.
Well, we recorded 5 minutes and we needed a cold open, so live with it. Welcome to Does This Still Work? The podcast looks at old movies and asks, does this still work? I'm Joe Dixon.
And I'm George Romaka, and today we're discussing Batteries Not Included from 1987 and some historical context. First, podcasty stuff. You can reach us at dtswpod@gmail.com, on Facebook, Letterboxd, and on our YouTube channel. Joe is on Blue Sky at joedixon.bsky.social. Please tell your friends about us, even the ones that never, not even once, ask their girlfriends if they'd like to be painted nude, and leave 5-star ratings everywhere. You can pick what we watch and get extra per episode content by funding us on Patreon for as little as $1 a month at patreon.com/DTSWpod. Now, Joe, take us back to 1987.
This story is set in New York. In the New York of 1987, we were still dealing with the AIDS crisis. We were dealing with the fallout of a white male subway shooter being acquitted of shooting black teenage boys. We were dealing with the story of a little girl who was illegally adopted being killed by her fake parents. And we were dealing with our habit, that's New York City's habit, of putting shitty mayors in City Hall, as was the case with Mayor Ed Koch. If you don't know, Ed was a closeted gay man who lifted not a finger to help the gay community, as they not only combated a deadly disease, but had to deal with the rampant homophobia that came along with it. I mean, he was so fearful of his sexuality that he refused to even meet with the community leaders to discuss AIDS. And here's a side note. Michael Carmine, who plays Carlos, would go on to die of AIDS in 1989 at the age of 30.
That's really young.
Yes. So Ed Koch was a garbage human being, not as much as a garbage human being as President Reagan, who wasn't closeted, but was just as happy to ignore the dying of gay folks. Now, at this point, you must be asking, Joe, what has all that got to do with Batteries Not Included? And the answer is nothing. The real New York and the one in this movie have very little in common, but at least the film does acknowledge blacks and Hispanics live here, which a lot of movies and TV shows of its era did not. In fact, if alien robots just went by some of the pictures we've seen for this podcast, they would think New York City and Los Angeles are two of the whitest cities in America. But again, that's not Batteries Not Included. B&I's closest relation to New York reality is real estate. Real estate was king in 1987 and it still is today. Always remember this. New York's biggest crime problem is what they get away with charging for rent. New York City landlords are more greedy and dangerous than any street criminal you'll ever meet.
Amen, Joe. Amen.
And speaking of criminal landlords, George, read this headline from Newsday that involves Mayor Koch and some other asshole.
Koch continues war on Trump. Ha!
That's right. Good old Donnie got into a pissing match with the mayor back in the day, making it impossible for a decent person to know who to root for. I will quote from the article. Trump wrote a letter to the mayor earlier this week, accusing him of having no sense of economic development and calling on him to resign. Koch responded with a statement. If Donald Trump is squealing like a stuck pig, I must have done something right. What Donald Trump is interested in is getting a package that is as rich as Midas. We can't rob the city treasury to provide Donald Trump with the dollars that he would like to take home at night. End quote. Okay, George, tell us about Batteries Not Included.
All right. This was written and directed by Matthew Robbins. It was also written by Mick Garris, whose work I've seen in Hocus Pocus This was also written by Brad Bird. For the show, we've seen his work in Up. Both Joe and I have seen his work in The Iron Giant and Inside Out, and I've seen his work in The Incredibles and Ratatouille. Blurbs. IMDb says, aliens help a feisty old New York couple in their battle against a ruthless land developer who's out to evict them.
Well, you leave out a lot there.
No. But okay. So let's draw a judgment on that after I read YouTube's. From Academy Award winner Steven Spielberg comes this delightful fantasy about never giving up on your dreams. When a real estate developer tries to get rid of the last 5 tenants of a derelict tenement building, they need nothing short of a miracle to stay off the streets. But hope does arrive in the form of tiny extraterrestrial beings that glide in through an open window. These intergalactic visitors may not speak the same language as the humans who find them, but they may be the solution to keeping everyone in their homes, including Hume Cronin, Jessica Tandy, and Elizabeth Pena. It's a whimsical, funny, and heartwarming journey the whole family can enjoy.
Okay. It says starring rather than including, but I guess it doesn't matter.
I mean, I'll take IMDb's blurb for actually being a blurb and not a review.
It's a biggie, though. They could have cut out a lot of that as well. I think the IMDb's is too short and YouTube's is way too long.
We need the middle bear, whatever that was.
We need a middle bear, yes.
That was Mama Bear, right?
Was Mama the one in the middle? I forget. Yeah, I guess so. It was Daddy's first and Mama, then the baby bear.
Yep, that's the...
Because Mama Bear and Papa Bear didn't sleep in the same bed, as you know.
Yep.
For some strange reason. But they had a child. Oh, well, I guess kids won't notice.
I mean...
That's probably what they said when they wrote the story.
They're bears. The fact that they are pairing off to raise young is really weird for bears. So, okay. The film opens with a montage of sepia-toned photos of our protagonists from the mid-1900s to the 1980s. A young couple get married, have a child, and open a diner in New York City, and we watch the child grow until he's about 18 and see him leaning against what looks like his brand new car. This is where the montage ends, and we'll find more about that later.
I think in here somewhere you made the observation that this reminded you of Up.
Yeah, I do.
And those little montages things, that's also an Up thing, and then later...
Oh yeah, no, that's my next scene title. It's like Up all over again. Yeah. Nowadays, meaning the 1980s, the area around the diner and the apartment building above it are under threat of modern real estate development. An entire city block around this building have been reduced to rubble, more or less.
So all these other people took the payoff to leave, and these people said, you know what, we love this neighborhood so much, but what's the love once all the other buildings are torn down?
Good question, Joe. We watch one of our protagonists, the elderly and trauma-induced dementia-suffering Faye Riley, as she walks through what's left of their neighborhood on her way back from some light grocery shopping, in that she doesn't actually bring back anything. Also, she calls it the marketing, which is weird.
Faye Riley is played by Jessica Tandy, and both George and I have seen her in The Birds. Curiously enough, we got to read her husband is in this, and he was also in a Hitchcock movie I saw. But I've never seen them in the Hitchcock movie together. I guess they didn't do one together.
Huh. Faye's husband, Frank Riley, with longtime tenants and friends Sid and Muriel Hodgkinson, frantically search for Faye within the diner. This stops when Frank feels the building rumbling.
Frank Riley is played by Hugh Cronin, who I've seen in Shadow of the Doubt, Hitchcock's Shadow of the Doubt, The Pelican Brief, we've discussed that film before, George and I, and The Parallax View.
And I've seen him in Brewster's Millions. Sid Hodgkinson is played by Tom Aldridge.
Muriel Hodgkinson is played by Jane Hoffman, and I've seen her in Where's Papa, and both George and I have seen her in and Out.
Yep. Frank runs outside as heavy equipment operator Gus brings a front loader to a stop, saying he just wanted a burger. Frank tells him to get lost just as Faye arrives. Faye tells Gus to take off his hat so she can see who he is before Frank brings her back inside. There will be a lot of Faye mistaking people for other people in this movie.
Well, one person in particular.
Yes.
Gus is played by John DeSanti, who for the show we've seen in Outrageous Fortune and I've seen in Lenny. Again, another scene that reminds you of Up. Because you remember the one of the construction guys also goes over to talk to the old man.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think this was influenced? Because Up came out after.
I am not, I could absolutely see whoever wrote Up having been influenced by this movie.
Because Brad Bird did work on Up, didn't he?
He did. Holy shit, he did. Did he plagiarize himself for Up?
And no one's noticed.
And nobody noticed. We are breaking this news on Does This Still Work? The 60 of you that hear this every week, you're going to be the only ones who know this. But Brad Bird is a self-plagiarist.
All right, moving on.
Back in the diner, Faye asks if Gus was Bobby. Bobby is the son that we saw growing up. And we'll find out later that he died in a car accident and that Faye blames Frank for it.
Spoiler alert!
Yeah, well, she would, except that she's blocked that memory out completely, leaving her trapped psychologically kind of just before Bobby died.
Which really begs the question, so has she been like this for over a decade?
60 years?
Because it's hard to believe he either wouldn't have put her in a home or someone would have forced him to put her in a home.
Well, he wasn't even taking care of her.
He really wasn't.
The Hodginsons told him, we'll get there in a second, but yeah, we'll get there. We can explore that in a second. How negligent a husband Frank had been.
Okay.
By the way, I used to love this movie, so much.
Okay.
I might still, but I have some issues now. Also returning from grocery shopping is another tenant, the young and very pregnant Marissa Estival. At the apartment building entrance, she is confronted by Carlos, the head thug for Lacey, the real estate developer looking to consolidate his hold on the area or whatever. Carlos and his goons follow Marissa all the way back to her apartment. He forces his way in, causing a statue of the Virgin Mary to fall and break. Carlos offers an envelope full of cash from Lacey to entice her to leave. They're doing this to all the tenants, offering cash and harassing them and breaking things. The other tenants are Mason Baylor and Harry Noble. Mason is an artist, and the thugs break his door. Harry is a gentle giant boxing champ handyman, and they break his jar full of mosaic tiles that he's been slowly repairing the lobby with. And is it just me, or did they try to give the black actor so few words that it wouldn't even necessarily count as a role?
Marissa Estival is played by Elizabeth Pena, who we've seen on the show in La Bamba, Gridlocked, and Lone Star. And I've seen her in Transamerica, Rush Hour, and Down and Out in Beverly Hills.
And I've seen her in The Incredibles.
Carlos is played by Michael Carmine. Mason Baylor is played by Dennis Boutasakis. And I've seen him in W. Harry Noble is played by Frank McKay. For the show, we've seen him in Norma Ray. And I've seen him in 1941, 48 Hours, Rocky 2, The End, and Walking Tall 2.
And I've seen him in The Wizard, a movie featuring a video game that I beat before it was ever released in the US.
Ah, okay.
Carlos and the thugs confront Frank in the diner, then literally throw him out and trash the place. Stuck outside, Frank runs to a limousine that he sees, thinking that Lacey will be in it so that he can scream at him. Instead, he gets the developer's Lieutenant Kovacs, who tells him to take the money because it's the last offer they're going to get.
Kovacs is played by John Pankow, who we've seen on the show in The Secret of My Success, and I've seen in To Live and Die in L.A., and he was a regular on the show I watch called Mad About You.
The police are no help to Frank, because they're bastards. What do you expect? Saying that there isn't a neighborhood here to protect.
But I mean, literally, these guys assault this old man. That's an arrestable offense, if nothing else.
Oh, all of the people that you're going to accuse of doing that are going to swear that they each were all somewhere else? That's really going to get them off of the charge there. Yes.
And who is he to decide that? I mean, you're just a cop. Just arrest.
You're a cop. You are not a jury. Juries determine that. We have those for reasons. Anyway, Mason arrives with a lady from the Landmark and Preservation Board, or whatever it was called in the 1980s. She looks at the building and sees the same thing, that there's nothing there to preserve.
They really should have been thrown out of that building because it was crumbling from the looks of it. Like, this couldn't possibly be safe.
Housing and Human Services existed in 87, right?
Yeah, it sure did.
Yeah, they inspected private residences then too. Like, make sure they're up to code and shit. Harry starts straightening up the diner, but it's all too much for him. He even sees that one of the photos that was on the wall was torn to shreds, which begs the image. Just Carlos going to town with a baseball bat, puts down the baseball bat to extract a photo from a picture that he had just smashed the glass on, then tore it up and placed the pieces back into the frame before resuming swanging things with his baseball bat.
You never heard of that?
It just doesn't seem plausible, Joe.
It was an 80s thing.
I mean, this movie is going to feature flying, gendered alien robots, and that's more believable than Carlos having tore up that picture. That tore up picture thing is important for Frank because we need a very specific broken thing that can get fixed for him later.
Mm-hmm. It's Chekhov's photo.
Yes. Chekhov's photo, Chekhov's statue of the Virgin Mary, Chekhov's door, and Chekhov's jar with tiles in it.
A lot of Chekhov.
Checking off all over the place.
That's terrible.
Mason's girlfriend decides to leave him because he is so hell-bent on staying in this building despite everything falling apart around him.
You could do analytics deconstruction, Neo Geo hard edge. But no, you've got to be the Andrew Wyeth of the East Village.
I do not understand any of the reference that she made, but I appreciate the effort of the writing into them. That was like... It all went over my head because I don't know shit about art. I can imagine that art nerd watching this movie was like, yes, I got every one of those references. I knew everything she was talking about. Frank is heartbroken to learn that Sid and Muriel have accepted Lacey's money and are moving to a retirement home in New Jersey. Now, on their way out, as if they are dropping their dog off at a, pet hotel, these neighbor friends explain to Frank what medications his wife is on and when she's supposed to be taking them. His dementia-addled wife.
That he's supposed to be taking care of.
The neighbors are taking care of for him. Why?
They're good friends.
Yep.
They're like the Mertzes.
Who can just leave and go to New Jersey and be like, I don't need this old lady's shit on my hands anymore.
But you're right. It is odd that this woman who's been suffering for this thing for at least 60 years... And her husband doesn't know the medications, doesn't know when she takes it.
Nothing.
That would be a red flag anyplace else. I mean, if your partner was on a medication, even for a few weeks, you should really know about it, let alone a good, maybe over a decade, couple of decades.
Mm-hmm. Once night falls, all of the tenants remaining go through their various nighttime rituals. Some are more normal than others. Mason throws all of his art out onto the street. Before Frank can fall asleep, he desperately asks nobody in particular to help them all.
Please. Somebody. Help us.
I appreciate the secular nature of that.
I mean, that's the nature of the film, but it's still basically saying you need a savior to come do something. Maybe you should try and take care of it yourself.
Well, but that's the conceit of the movie, is that they do need that, and
yes,
it's available, because right here is where this movie becomes what it's supposed to be, science fiction.
Mm-hmm.
Outside Faye's window appears a small flying saucer-like robot. This is the male of the species, and we'll get to that later. It flies through the apartment, checking everything and everyone out until it finds a wall outlet. Then it goes back to the window and signals its mate to come. She flies more erratically and, for lack of a better word, tiredly. Eventually, she alights on the counter and plugs herself into the wall. Then, once charged, she zooms around a bit before joining her mate to explore some more. They find that busted and tore up photo and then fix it. I don't know how. Where did they produce the glues at a minimum? How did they iron it flat again after it was all curled up? There are so many questions about what all these robots can do and what kind of intelligence is driving that decision making that we just have to accept as granted because it's a science fiction movie.
Yes, although if these things are into just fixing stuff, right outside is a whole bunch of buildings all torn down.
A whole fucking neighborhood.
I mean, and they're like fixing stuff. I can see a really big job for them right there. But okay, for some reason they decide to put this picture together, and then they go and do the Virgin Mary statue, and then they put together other things. And my question each time they go and do these things is, why?
Good question, Joe. Faye is awoken and spies a toaster seeming to scurry itself across the kitchen floor and out of the apartment. She follows it upstairs to a shack on the roof where she discovers the flying robots, who hover rather defensively before the scene ends. Note, any other person that makes these things feel threatened at all gets zapped and walking, they end up smoking.
Yes.
Not Faye, though.
It burns you enough that you're smoking, but not enough that you have third-degree burns or anything like that.
Right.
That's some robot magic. Who knew robots had magic, too?
Right? One by one, the tenants awaken and realize that their things that were broken earlier are now fixed.
Except their marriages.
Except their relationships, yeah. That's the Virgin Mary statue for Marissa, the door for Mason, the jar with the tiles in it for Harry, and the obvious photo that we mentioned. Those tenants all converge in the hallway and then hear Faye up on the roof. She's up there tossing scraps of metal and nails and such into the shed where the robots are as if she's feeding pigeons. Frank thinks she's having a dementia spell and tries to get her to stop. Mason goes to investigate the shed and gets blown out of it with his hair standing up and his body smoking. Faye proves the robots are real by smashing Frank's pocket watch. The robots are apparently unable to resist fixing things and repair the watch right before their eyes.
Yeah, maybe it's their addiction. That's why they keep doing these things. They're a family of addicts.
It's their affixidin.
Affixidin, thank you. You're going to do this all night?
I do that all. You just don't notice, Joe. I'm always smashing words together with reckless abandon.
Quick, since we brought up Mason getting fried and his hair staying up over beer, how much product do you think they needed in the budget for this man? That dude is hairy. I thought, what's his face in MASH? Elliot Gould was a hairy bastard. This guy beats him hands down.
Yeah.
Wow, was he hairy?
There was like a bottle of whatever the cheapest store brand hair gel there is. An entire bottle of it.
100%. This is a man who should be the spokesman for Manscaped. For sure.
Right? Manscaped will make your shit stand on end. The robots, or Fix-Its, as they will be known. Not by me. I vary wildly in what I call these things throughout the script. They've even fixed the entire diner downstairs. The tenants can't help but turn on the jukebox to celebrate. Kovacs pulls up outside and on an old-timey car phone, because he sees what's going on, he makes a call, because nobody should be happy inside that building right now.
And maybe they explained this in the film and I just missed it. Now, I get it that the building's pretty much abandoned and they're still living there and all that, but...
Who are they paying rent to?
That's number one. That's true. Yeah, I was going to get to that. Okay. But also, their electric bills, shouldn't they be... I mean, everything else is shut down in the neighborhood, so they're the only ones paying the electricity in that whole neighborhood?
I mean, even in the 80s, a lot of the cables were buried, so it didn't necessarily mean that they couldn't still have power.
Okay.
Each tenant deals with the new discovery in their own ways. Harry goes into the basement to just observe them. Frank and Marissa look through newspapers for any mention of anything like them. And Mason tries to get a hold of the army and then some other unknown agency to see if any of them lost any super secret high tech. Which
again references what movie? Well, not again, I should say. And what it references what movie?
Toys?
Short.
Oh, Short Circuit. Fuck yeah. Uh-huh. That's a much better answer than what I gave.
Me of a lot of pictures.
Yeah.
Except Midnight Cowboy, weirdly enough, even though I have that in the cold open.
Yeah. What's on your mind, Joe?
What isn't it on my mind?
The mail robot hops its way down a corridor inside of a bread box, and the tenants try to communicate to it. When Faye calls for breakfast, the tenants see the female robot plugged in. Frank asks it if this is why it's here before it unplugs itself and zips around. Breaking a bunch, like knocking a bunch of shit over. Like, would it immediately stop and fix anything that... too many questions. Carlos and his aluminum baseball bat return and ask the tenants who's been cleaning up after him. One of the robots inside a cast iron pot bonks him on the head, while the other inside of an umbrella vessel steals his bat, and then both the robots go upstairs. Despite being warned against doing so, Carlos tries to get his bat back and gets toasted by the robots. His clothes in tatters, he runs away screaming.
Fortunately, the burns are actually not serious. Because only his clothes are fried and his hair is all up, but...
Yep. Hey, just like, Michael J. Fox's claws in Teen Wolf.
Indeed. They don't leave a mark.
That evening at dinner, Frank and Mason ponder why the audience has to suspend their disbelief.
Me and Faye, we needed help.
Oh, you think that they're here because of you?
The quickest way to end a miracle is to ask it why it is, or what it wants.
That felt so weird. Like, number one, nobody ever says that.
ask a miracle anything? That doesn't even make. What am I? How do you ask a miracle?
Miracles are most identifiably categorized as events. How do you ask an event a thing?
Yeah, that was a weird statement he made there.
I mean, I get it. Don't look a gift horse in the mouth. But he could have just said, don't look a gift horse in the mouth. Or peek under its skirt with a magnifying glass.
or he could simply say, I don't know why they're here, and I don't care. It's working out great for us. I mean, the robots even knew who to attack. How did they know to attack Carlos?
Right.
How is Carlos different from all the other humans? But apparently they knew, no, this is the guy. He's bad.
So I will note one thing. I regret that there was no way we could access this movie the way you would have seen it in 1987. There was a lot of CG correction and stuff in this. Like when Mason's looking in it with the magnifying glass and you see like the zoom, that wasn't 1987 graphics.
Oh, really?
No.
How do you know this?
Because I've been watching movies and I've been playing video games and I know what the technology was capable of rendering as graphics. More or less wasn't that.
Oh, but you're presuming you don't have to have this as a fact anywhere.
Oh, absolutely. I'm presuming it. Yes, I am assuming
Okay.
that this, like every other fucking movie, got finished. If there's anything that you could do that to, like it was movies that involved science fiction stuff. Marissa asks Faye about Bobby, and we watch Faye try and fail to recall any recent memories of him. This doesn't really upset her, and she quickly pivots to how Marissa is going to be a wonderful mother, without having any evidence with which to make that.
I know Mason is supposed to be the artist, so I presume he gets some money somehow from there. But what is it? Frank is supposed to run that restaurant, but sure they can't. He doesn't have that many customers because there's no neighborhood anymore. And the one time someone shows up, he chases the guy away.
Yeah.
So he's not making any money. And what the hell does Marissa do for a living?
Good questions, Joe.
Okay.
Lots of them. Again, though, you don't have to know. Like, that's not the kind of question that's going to break this movie.
You can't look a gift movie in the mouth. Don't question when there's a miracle happens in a movie. Don't question it or something like that.
Something like that. Everyone rushes up to the roof to watch the robots flying around in a mating ritual before settling into their shed to do whatever robots do for mating. Number one, that was one of the scenes I think they definitely touched up with CGI.
Okay.
And number two, I don't know. When I've had sex, maybe it's just me, but I've had sex with more than one person. Not once has the building lifted off and emitted light. So I don't know how Faye was able to determine that these robots were copulating just by observing that behavior of the shed.
She's very insightful. She knows how robots, get it on.
Mm-hmm. She must have an extensive toy collection. Faye says that the Fix-Its are going to be hungry, which I assume means she intuited that the female robot is now pregnant. Whatever that means. They string as many extension cords as they can find with some big-ass Christmas lights provided by Harry to run power all the way to the roof shed where the robots are nesting. Frank gives some backstory on Harry having been a championship boxer.
You sort of touched on this earlier, so maybe you want to get into it now. They're robots.
Uh-huh.
They're from outer space.
Yep.
Why do they have genders at all?
Because something's got to do the birthing. Because these two robots that we see repair things and that we will later see can repair themselves or each other can't assemble a robot between them in order to procreate. No, one has to be pregnant and then birth other robots. Because that's the limits of the imagination here.
Yeah, it does beg the question, why would a bunch of machines need birthing? Just build another one.
Yep.
Why would they want to copulate? That's a human emotion. That's something humans do. Because our bodies are like that. But a machine, why would that even occur to them?
Good questions, Joe. Carlos spies on the roof the next day from a nearby derelict building. His gang gives him grief for being scared off. By night, they'll completely abandon him. The tenants continue feeding the robots with scraps of metal and watch them dismantle it to be taken in by the female bot. Marissa and Mason have another conversation about why the robots may be here. They bond on their way down to her apartment, and she doesn't let him in because she recovered all of his artwork that he threw out on the street and has it arrayed inside.
That means she has a crush.
Yup. That evening, it is time for the mama bot to give birth. She gives birth to 2 baby robots, and I'm sorry, I don't have a better way to describe that process or those robots. And 1 stillborn robot.
Which is pretty wild to put in such a light movie.
In fact, the next thing I have written is because what this lighthearted family sci-fi romp about the capitalist urbanization of America and treatment of the elderly needed was more drama. In the morning, Faye buries the stillborn robot in a flower pot. Harry sneaks up and steals it and is chased all the way to his room by the other tenants, who then just fucking give up.
They do. It's so important and suddenly it's not.
Yep. He starts taking apart things like his TV to make parts to try and fix the little fella. Which I gotta respect that.
Sure.
I've taken apart other electronics to get at a thing that I could desolder and put in a different thing.
I still wonder, like, oh, they're from outer space and yet their technology seems to match ours really well. You think they'd be more advanced. But no, all of our stuff is compatible.
It's not the technology, it's just that they can work. That's actually something that doesn't break my disbelief.
Oh, yeah?
They are obviously skilled at using metals. So they have mini smelters and centrifuges and shit inside of them to separate out elements and make, traces for circuit boards and shit. Whatever. I don't have a problem with that.
Okay.
Before long, the diner is bustling with activity, with the adult robots helping and the baby robots getting into all kinds of hijinks. Faye has a moment where she can remember the baby robots, but not the fact that her son is dead. Kovacs and Bobby investigate the shed on the roof. Kovacs doesn't believe anything that Carlos tells him. So Carlos goes down to the diner and tries to make a scene, but he gets run out by the other patrons. And through his technical know-how and a series of accidents, Harry, the championship boxer / handyman, manages to revive the stillborn robot baby.
From outer space.
From outer space. Mason brings groceries to Marissa and then sees that she has the artwork he threw away. Before long, he's painting her nude. I mean, she's not nude, but he's painting her that way. Which is worse. Yes. Then, her musician boyfriend and his band return, and Mason feels sidelined. Carlos meets with Lacey himself, who dismisses him as a failure, saying that he already has someone else on deck to take care of the whole get rid of that building situation. Carlos doesn't seem to understand this and says he's going to do it anyway. Okay.
Lacey is played by Michael Green, who I've seen in To Live and Die in L.A. and Play It Again, Sam.
We get a montage of the parent robots teaching the younger robots how to fly. Meanwhile, Harry is training the one he revived to respond to a dog whistle. Then the formerly stillborn robot joins its siblings, and the kids are happy together.
So happy together.
Ba-da-ba-ba. Yep. Mason comes in drunk and says the robots will probably be leaving soon since their babies can fly now. Then he and Marissa have a little spat over her already having a boyfriend, and she tells him that she told her boyfriend to go travel the world. Then they kiss.
Because why not?
Yep. Carlos shows up in the basement with an axe and starts smashing piping and electric meters. The tenants and robots go down to investigate, and Carlos ends up rolling a nat 20 against the male robot, knocking it out. The tenants force him back upstairs before Harry takes the time to put on his boxing gloves before pummeling him. Faye once again confuses Carlos for Bobby and gets big mad about how they're treating him and then runs upstairs. The mama bot starts making repairs on the daddy bot as the tenants realize that the baby bots have fled. They go to wander around town looking for them before Harry gets the idea to go someplace high and blow his whistle. By the time the baby bots hear that and come to him, the repairs on daddy bot are finished. The parents come to collect their children, and Harry has a problem letting go of the littlest one, but eventually does, and the robots fly away as a family. We still have like 20 minutes left in the movie.
They live, I believe, they say they live in the East Village, if I'm not mistaken.
They do.
And at one point, we see them walking in what section of town?
Times Square.
So are we to believe they walked all the way from the East Village to Times Square?
I mean, we know from other movies how small New York is. That's just like...
Yeah, New York's such a small town.
It's a hop, skip, and a jump. Carlos returns again to the basement, finding another of Lacey's henchmen rigging the building to explode. He beats the crap out of the guy, claiming that it's his building to take down, but when he realizes Faye is still in the building, he suddenly develops a conscience and goes to become the rescuer.
Now, what have you seen of this character's behavior from the beginning to the end that thought it would go there?
His heart grew 3 sizes that day?
I mean, he's terrible, although he never actually hits her or anything, which he could potentially do, or him, although he just threw the guy down the stairs, which is wild. He does not seem like that cool a guy, beyond the fact that he will go just so far, but still, like, and yet, for some reason, I'm going to rescue this woman I've been harassing this whole time.
If this movie was 13 and a half minutes longer, by the end of it, Carlos is gay and singing in a musical on Broadway. While attempting to rescue Faye, he pretends to be her dead son, Bobby. This pretending snaps Faye out of her delirium, and then she realizes Bobby's dead and tries to fight off Carlos. He manages to get her out of the burning building just in time for the other tenants to return. Harry gets in the ambulance with his wife, and the rest of the tenants watch as their building collapses.
Mm-hmm. You do have to wonder how he gets her out of the building over his shoulder like that, because suddenly she's unconscious. So what can we assume that happened in that moment that he was rescuing her?
Thunk. That's what. Come morning, Harry is sitting on the stoop, the only part of the building that remains. The construction workers refuse to move on the building until Harry moves, so they just give up for the day. And Harry's still sitting there at night, when the littlest baby bot returns and starts placing mosaic tiles. Harry looks up to see the sky filled with others of this strange, gendered, live birth-giving robot alien species.
Maybe this is early Borg, before they evolved further.
Yeah, when they had the collective idea down pat without the assimilation.
Yes.
The Borg had started as a hippie commune. It had to.
Had to.
In the morning, all of the tenants that are not there receive word where they're at to return to there. They find that the robots have completely rebuilt the building to its original specifications. How the fuck they knew to do that? No idea. They went down to City Hall and got the fucking blueprints?
Don't you know when you put a building back together, you can tell exactly how it's supposed to look?
From dust particles and ash, yes.
Yes.
Surrounded by news media, Lacey is forced to acknowledge that he is in a movie and he's the bad guy and has to lose, so they'll just build everything around this building. And the tenants return home and live happily ever after, or however long marriages lasted and old people lived in the 80s. The end.
The end. All right, my friend. Does it still work?
Yes. It's a cute little sci-fi family thing. It's stupid, but it works. It works because I still like them. It works because cute robots, like, I give them way too much. I give them way too much weighting in my wanting things to work, but cute robots get me there almost every time.
Okay. No, I agree with you. I think it still works. It's fine. It's inoffensive enough. Nothing I can find that has aged it terribly. Yeah. I mean, we sort of gloss over how bad the husband you grow
yeah.
But that's just the nature of films. Oh, I love my blah, blah, blah so much, and then they do the shittiest things to them, but they end up together anyway at the end. That's American movies. What can I say?
Yep.
Anyway, so that's fine. That sets it in age so poorly. The way it shows dementia is kind of weird, but other than that, it's fine.
Yeah.
It really is. And like I said, it acknowledges black people and Hispanics exist in this city. That's nice.
Yeah.
That's not always the case. So yeah, it still works.
Alrighty.
All right, my friend, what's up next?
Next week, we'll be concluding our accidental foray into the mid-'80s. Like the last two movies. This movie, the one before it, and, well, we're going to be looking at Flight of the Navigator from 1986. So, yep, it's an 80s month.
We love the 80s, apparently.
Have you seen Flight of the Navigator?
I have not.
Get ready to see a very young Sarah Jessica Parker.
Oh, okay, cool. Well, I look forward to that. So I guess that's it for this episode. I'm Joe Dixon. Thanks for listening.
And I'm George Romaka. Thanks for listening indeed, because if a podcast drops and there's no one around to hear it, it's just another collection of ones and zeros that doesn't matter.
And to think that I've been telling my friends that it's so cool living with an artist.
You never once asked to paint me nude.
You've been listening to Does This Still Work? Produced by Joe Dixon and George Romaka. The hosts can be reached via social media, email, or the contact page at dtswpod.com. Be good to yourself and others, because that still works.
don't know why that was funny.
I don't either.
It seemed funny to say, and you laughed, but I don't actually know what the punchline of the thing I just said was. If you had to describe your current life as a movie, which movie would you choose?
Have you ever found mold in something you were eating and just ate around it?
What is something you own that you have never used?
George, why are single women happier than single men?
Has any recent event restored any of your faith in humanity? And by faith, I mean faith, confidence, or trust.
What is the longest and shortest flight you've ever been on?